I'm going to talk for 10 minutes. I've been asked to talk about what is the Constitution and what is a constitutional convention, a people's assembly that can solve the problem. So we now have a socking great constitutional crisis in this country. It's there at the national level in terms of Scotland, it's there at the international level in terms of Europe, it's there at the internal level in terms of incredible financial inequality, it's there in terms of the electoral system and how unequal and unfair it is, not least to UKIP. We took 4 million votes and only got 1 member of parliament. So the first thing I want to say very simply, because it's really important, is what is a constitution? And in this country now, if you say I think we should change the constitution, people think this is all rather complicated and for lawyers and it's all very difficult. And you're supposed to make it be something, they've managed to get it to be something that regular people can't talk about. So basically, if you think about it, you know, in health terms, your constitution is your health. Okay, you need doctors if it's complicated, but if somebody comes along to you and says, how's your health? That's a pretty simple question. And if we say that about the way this country is governed, what is its health like? It's on its last legs. So that's what we're facing. The next thing in that sense, which is very simple, is that all constitutions, whether they're codified ones, which most countries have, or uncodified ones like this country's, all constitutions basically do 3 basic things. The first thing that they do is that they give you the rules. They are the rules about how the rules are made. That's what a constitution does. The basic thing. Every cricket club, every association in this country has a rule book which hopefully you never have to read, but is there. The first set of rules are how different bits of power relate to each other. If you have lawyers, if you have local government, you have national government, you have 2 houses of parliament, how are these the different centres of power, who has more power than whom, how do they relate to each other, which one, what can they do? That's the first thing a constitution does. It's about it adjudicates the rules, it sets out the rules for different centres of power. The second thing the constitution does is it tells you about the relationship between the individuals, the citizens, we're not citizens of this country, we're subjects, but the people and the power system. What rights do we have? Can we vote or not vote? Who can vote? What rights do we have in terms of going to law? Do we have access to the law? Is the law open to us all? So that sense of what are our rights, what powers do we have as an individual, what does it mean to be a citizen? That's the second thing the Constitution lays out, the regulations and describes. And the third thing the Constitution does is it sets out what kind of country we want to be. It's kind of the aspirational side. This is often not written down. For example, life, liberty and the pursuit of happiness is a constitutional virtue of the United States. It's what they aspire for. It's not in their constitution, it's in their Declaration of Independence. So the German constitution is really about not being a Nazi country again. The South African constitution, which is a very good one, is about not being a racist country again. So those are the 3 things a constitution does. All constitutions. Now ask yourself, what is our constitution in those 3 basic fundamental terms? And we have a constitution which was saying, it did say, that we enjoy the absolute sovereignty of Parliament. It was technically the Crown and Parliament, the Queen and Parliament together. That's the House of Commons over there and the House of Lords over there can do whatever they wish. If they want to draw a new border through Africa, if they want to abolish the monarchy in India, if they want to give a government to Manchester, if they want to take it away, they can. They are the law, the absolute sovereignty of Parliament. That is our constitution, and we are subjects to that. Now the important thing about this, historically in this country, is that this ruling class which set up this very centralised imperial system always sought to make sure it had the consent of the population as a whole. That's very different from democracy. We didn't have the right to govern ourselves as would be set out in the Constitution, but they sought to make sure that we gave them our consent. And that was the nature, the gift and the limit, hello there, of our democracy. And what kind of country did we aspire to be? We aspired to be a country which would get medals from the Queen, which would behave well, which would honour the monarchy and honour this system and know our place, and we would be one of the greatest countries in the world. That's what it was, and that constitution, which worked, and we have to recognise it also helped to save this country from fascism. This constitution is now a shambles. It is broken. It's broken morally, it's broken electorally, it's broken nationally, it's broken internationally. I could give you a whole list of all the technical ways in which it doesn't work. I'll give you one example. They made a vow to keep Scotland in the Union. The three political leaders, they signed it. You can see it, it's up there, it's in the equivalent of the Daily Mirror in Scotland, it's on the web, and it was signed by the three people that were the leaders of our parties, okay? And they said the Scottish Parliament is permanent. They said to the Scottish people, your Parliament is permanent. That means that the sovereignty of this Parliament can no longer abolish it. It is lodged in the will of the Scottish people. The Scottish people govern themselves. They are now a sovereign people. They have their own Parliament and only they can take it away. And that means that the sovereignty of this place is now in crisis. Is it the boss or not? And if it isn't, what does it do about it? How does it relate to the rest of us? And the fear that we didn't have the answers is one of the things that drove voters in England to vote by 40% for the Conservative Party, who actually have no idea what they're doing. Except they want to screw us. Now, how do we get out of this mess? And how do we do so in a democratic way which has the assent, not just the consent, but the positive assent of the population of this country? And the answer is we need a constitutional convention. Now this means that we set up, it's a very simple way of doing it. I'm not saying this will happen, but it should happen and it could happen. And it's being done in other countries, in Ireland, in Iceland. People are learning how to do this. You create an assembly of people. You give to this assembly a very clear brief. You say we want to have a new written constitution over 2 years with massive participation that you put to a referendum. You give it the authority to come to its own conclusions and put those conclusions to the population as a whole. And who is in this assembly? Well, in my view, this is just the way I would do it, it should be half selected by lot. The technical term is sortition. It means being like a jury. So 50% of them are women. It's equal from the north and the south regionally. And then it's a random, so just you, people like you or me, who are selected and given 2 years to deliberate. Now there are processes of deliberation so people can listen to what the arguments are and people come to their own view. And that should be like, say, we have 400 people, 200 are regular folk selected by lot, 100 come proportionately, but 50% women from the House of Commons, and the other quarter comes from people involved in local government, also with gender equality. And that assembly is given the powers to draft a modern, new, regular constitution and make us a modern, new, democratic European country. But the one thing you can't do is give it to these guys to solve, because they're the problem. Hey. And they're going to come up with solutions which say, well, we'll take your advice and then we'll think about it. And all these things will be lost in the miasma of parliamentary procedure. So we are looking at an institution which is inherently and structurally undemocratic. We know we've got to do something better, and we have got to go outside this system to get a better answer, to put it to the people, and to give ourselves a democratic sovereignty, so we have a constitutional democracy and we know what the rules are and they belong to us and not to them. Thank you very much.